Hello everyone, this is CatNightTV, and this is Cat, and today we are doing Brilliant Shadows Part 1 of the Book of Grey Magic, a visual novel, and we are on Part 2. Right now we are about to choose whether we want to go to the gardens or go to the training grounds, so let's get started. And I think... let's try the gardens. Some fresh air and the scent of roses that weren't long since dried out would do her well. With that thought in mind, Ash drew a book from her shelf. It was one of the many she had read more than a dozen times before for her research. Tucking the book under her arm, she slid out the door, locking it behind herself. The walk to the garden was spent with the book as a blinder, obscuring the path directly before her. Not that it was one she needed to see to walk. She had taken that path almost every day for 16 years. The book itself was so familiar, she may as well recite it as she read it. She had discovered it in her 11th year. It had been in the Paladin section of the library. Its title was Healing Plants. She had at first assumed from the title it was a glossary of medicinal herbs. The actual contents were quite different. Though the book was old, it contained documentation into an entirely new technique. It documented a paladin's forays into attempting to heal plants. Ultimately, the very author determined the research, though successful, useless. Ash had seen it from another perspective. If one could perform one of the pairing magics upon a plant, why couldn't one perform the opposite? She had then begun her research into plant reanimation. Having finally graduated and paired, this should have been her golden opportunity to actually put her research to the test. Lacking a pair from which to draw the light needed, however, left her where she had been the last 5 years.
Lighted shadows!
The rancor in the girl's voice was enough to peel her eyes from the book and into the garden around her. When exactly had she arrived? She had been really into it. A girl stood at the far end of the mostly empty garden. Her hand was outstretched, and she was sweating as she strained.
Come on!
The girl's intensity made the air feel heavy. Her pale face, a complexionary side effect of being a necromancer, was beginning to darken and redden.
Please!
The girl's outstretched hand flexed. At once the girl collapsed, panting desperately.
Are you okay?
The girl started, her eyes looking to Ash with fear.
I'm fine. Don't bother me! Can't you see I'm training?
The young necromancer's eyes were heavy with tears. Ash wondered if the girl could even recognize her through that haze.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you need help?
No! I don't need help from anyone. I can pass my exams. No problem!
With that, the girl turned on her heel and was away at a run, if a slow one.
Well, okay then.
Ash shrugged and turned back to her book. She was sure the girl could use some help, but she wasn't about to offer it. She doubted she could really be of assistance anyway, with her own plate already tall with her own problems.
What you reading there?
A new girl had appeared, and she leaned over Ash with interest and enthusiasm that reminded her of the day she had found the book. A shiver raced down her spine.
Sorry. Too close?
The girl stepped back.
It's a book on healing plants.
Healing plants? That doesn't sound particularly useful. Not unless you have sentient plants or something. Wait, there aren't sentient plants, are there?
No, or at least none I'm aware of. I use the book as a reference for my own research. It's become a kind of comfort read for me.
Oh, I know about those. I had a copy of the monster manual as a kid. I can't make it past Aboleth without nodding right off.
What? Abhole-ith? What was this girl on about?
Yeah, something like that.
So, what kind of research are you doing?
The girl was twirling a rose between her fingers.
I'm trying to develop a method to reanimate plants. I was hoping to test out my spells once I had been paired, but...
Ash simply trailed off, not really wanting to go into the details of her situation.
Yeah, I don't really understand the whole pairing thing.
Ash cocked an eyebrow at the girl. She looked the same age as her. Surely, she should be years into her ritual training by now.
Well, not yet anyway. Not completely. So, reanimating plants. That sounds more useful than healing them.
With a small smile, the girl carefully laid the rose on the book.
Could you, like, bring back a field of failed crops or something?
I don't know yet. It may leave the crops devoid of nutrition, so that may not be an option. I don't know what it can be used for, to be honest, or even if it can be done.
Just need to push the limits one way or another, huh?
Ash nodded and stared at the phoenix on her hand.
It's a pretty bird. What is it?
Was she asking what a mark was? No, that was rude to even assume. It only took her a moment more to realize what the girl had meant.
It's the phoenix mark. I don't know what it supposedly means, though. I don't buy into mark interpretation.
Do you know anyone else with the mark?
No, it's pretty rare, apparently. Meaning, the only other person with my mark is my pair.
Idly, Ash's eyes fell to the girl's hands. She wore gloves. That was odd.
Ash, are you here?
Prude's voice came from behind her, and Ash turned on instinct.
Ash, was it?
Ash turned to see the girl giving a small wave.
It looks like you have company. I will excuse myself. Good luck on your research.
The girl smiled as she departed, and Ash smiled back. Ash knew it would only be a matter of time before Prude found her. Prude was like that, always caring. The two of them walked together back toward Ash's room.
At least it doesn't look like it was me that woke you up this time.
No, just Hector. He lost consciousness on my bed.
Wait. Did he pass out while checking on you?
Yes, and might I add that it's nice to know that you didn't immediately assume the worst.
Please. Well, I won't say I couldn't imagine a romance forming between you two. I doubt either of you are the type to find yourselves in bed so early into it.
The two laughed, a little too loudly perhaps. After a time, Ash slowed her pace, turning to look at Prude.
I just wanted to say that I'm sorry.
Sorry? For what?
I'm sorry that you were going to be stuck here with me. I know you were really looking forward to returning home and joining the King's Guard.
It's okay. I'm sure my mom can wait a bit longer. Excusing that, if it meant being away from my best friend, I wouldn't really want to go.
Ash knew the comment was supposed to comfort, but guilt strangled her.
You know that we're going to have to separate eventually. Even if we figure out what is happening with my mark, the fact remains that you were paired to Hector. Even if it turns out I wasn't properly paired, we still weren't paired to each other.
Well, my reasoning is that whoever you are eventually paired with will still end up paired.
Ash's heart beat quickly and she could feel a blush in her cheeks.
Thanks for saying that.
We promised we'd always be together, right? Though, it's strange to think that there could be others involved in our little friendship. I barely knew Hector until the ritual.
Funny, he knew you.
He did?
She seemed far too eager to hear more about Ash's last remark.
He came to wake me up the day of the ceremony, only minutes after yourself. He commented that it wasn't really a surprise that you'd have taken the time to wake me up.
Huh. I wonder if there was a personal reason for him knowing me, or if he just happens to have taken the time to memorize the identity of every student.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised either way, though I don't know which is creepier.
Hey, he's still my partner. You shouldn't call him creepy.
My apologies, my dear, but I do believe it was he who called himself creepy. Or would you disagree with him?
Prude cocked her head in exaggerated thought.
I suppose I really can't argue with an expert.
The two laughed. It was a familiar sensation, and for a moment the shock of the ritual was finally, if however temporarily, behind them.
Should we maybe go for a walk and let him nap?
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm glad he's sleeping. I was actually starting to feel tired from the amount of sleep he was skipping. So, I wrote my mother with the news.
How did she handle it?
As well as can be expected.
So, poorly?
Prude nodded.
She says my duty to my kingdom is far greater than my duty to my school, and commands I leave at once. A greater concern is that the contract for her hedge mage has come up, and Aku says she has another position already waiting for her. Mother had been planning quite specifically for my prompt return.
I'm sorry. This is all my fault. Tell her that for me.
Oh, she knows. She says that I should just bring Heck with me. And I quote, "Let the sodding moldy sacks who call themselves heads suck a wand."
Oh, my. That's quite colorful language for royalty.
I know! I'm sure she was quite proud of it.
So, what are you going to do?
Well, my plan is similar to her own, save for one point she didn't account for. I intend to bring you.
What, have a trio instead of a pair?
Until we find the other phoenix? Yes.
That's ridiculous. It would also be a trio in name only. I wouldn't be able to actually contribute to pairing magic.
I think it's a good idea. Leaving you here is just tragic.
That certainly sheds a positive light on my predicament.
I plan to have Heck speak with the heads. He might be able to convince them of the need to get you away from here.
I only just noticed it, but are you calling him Heck?
Yeah, I'm Prude, you're Ash, and he's Heck.
Oh, I suppose that makes sense. Why does he get a nickname already?
Well, I'm stuck with him for a long time one way or another. Might as well let him in our fun a little early, no?
Ash forced a smile.
So back to the matter at hand. Why do you insist on Heck talking to the heads? Shouldn't you have more clout, seeing as you're of a royal lineage?
You should know this better than I. But I think Heck's stronger than either of the heads alone, at least in terms of magical ability. Did you notice when he picked a fight with Zachariah in your room?
I noticed the blood, and when she kicked him in the stomach.
Yeah, he disagreed with how they handled the situation.
And what, he attacked them?
More or less. I didn't really see what escalated the argument, but by the time I was there, Zachariah was on the ground, and Luciana was turning purple while her golems were pummeling him into submission. Ash, he was a student 2 years ago. They are the heads of their orders. He shouldn't be that strong. Despite the confrontation, they have a certain degree of respect for him.
Sounds more like they have a certain degree of fear.
Still, they will listen to him more than myself.
I can't imagine they will still be willing to let us go.
At some point, it won't be worth it for them to keep us here any longer. There really is only so much they can do to investigate this without resorting to something drastic like Heck wanted to try.
So what will I do there?
I'm sure my mother will find uses for a trio of mages.
And what if I never find the truth behind my mark?
Then you're still a capable necromancer who will, if nothing else, have a position in court.
And no chance of high adventure, I suppose.
Perhaps not, but there was that risk when we decided to join the Kingsguard.
Prudence, Veronica, why are you about?
Is there a reason we shouldn't be?
Dearest goddess, I pray you're not taking after Hector so quickly. I had hoped a year or two of shame might have shackled a bit of that arrogance, but apparently it only made it infectious.
Zachariah, there's no need to be so controlling. The girls are graduates after all.
They may be graduates, but they're also involved in what may be the greatest scandal our school has ever experienced.
I am sure we will find out what has happened in time. Hector is busy looking into it right now.
Zachariah sneered.
We are conducting an investigation of our own. We do not need the assistance of a freshly paired pup to...
Luciana began laughing and Zachariah looked embarrassed for a moment.
Zachariah is still a bit sore over losing.
I did not lose. He caught me off guard. Even the best warriors cannot easily counter a sneak attack.
Of course, my love, a sneak attack. Now, to be frank, we are entirely fine with Mr. Warlock pursuing his own line of research. But both Zachariah and I agree that there is likely a much more mundane explanation to this.
We do not understand the exact limitations of the ritual.
Most likely, there was someone performing the ritual at its absolute maximum range, possibly even outside the mountain. Meaning there is someone, possibly a candidate of significant ability and skill, in a nearby village, who will bear the Phoenix mark.
And once we find this candidate, you will have a partner, and will be allowed to leave.
I'm confused. Why do Heck and Prude need to stay here then?
Zachariah looked uncomfortable with the question.
The fact still remains that if we are wrong, Hector has conducted more research related to the subject than any living mage. Though my dear will be loath to admit it, his knowledge and insight may be invaluable to determining an alternative cause.
If he knew so much, you'd think he would have known the range of the ritual.
She's still a bit salty. Now, if you'll excuse us, we were just about to go speak with your seekers. We need to conduct a sweep for candidates immediately.
Zachariah maintained a sneer as the two walked away.
What does salty mean?
It's a soldier term, I think. It means something around the lines of being upset.
I like it.
What I can't believe is that he just passed out so easily.
Are you kidding? He was about 2 steps from the grave in his condition.
I want to be sure, though. It doesn't bother you, right? Him sleeping in your bed, I mean.
He is sleeping alone. Were he to have tried to join me, my opinion may have been different, but as it stands, I have no qualms.
You're handling it better than I would.
That's just because you've always had a weakness for boys.
No, I mean everything. I wasn't just talking about the bed. And I don't have a weakness for boys. You just have a complete lack of regard for them. You know, we've been here for, goddess, how many years has it been? 15? And you have yet to...
Please, Prude, there is more to life than relationships.
I know, but...
Prude, look, I had supposed that such things would wait until I was paired and we were truly beginning our lives.
Ah, so what you're saying is that you want something more romantic. Something with more substance than the fling at school.
And you don't?
Prude sighed.
I'm not sure what I want anymore.
Ash's eyes grew wide before she followed Prude's gaze to the sleeping Hector.
You can't possibly mean...
I have the solution.
Hector was up with such a jolt that both Prude and Ash were against the wall, arms raised and magic summoned.
She is paired with a plant, because clearly if her research is correct...
A long pause hung.
I have lost my train of thought.
More like you woke up from your dream.
That may have been it.
I'm actually curious as to your thought process there.
Well, if Veronica is right, and one can animate a plant in the same way one might a corpse, then the same potential for magic energy may exist in a plant.
So, a plant performed the ritual.
Hector allowed a long pause to hang in the air before shaking his head.
It made sense while I was sleeping.
How do you know so much about my research? I don't share my notes.
I figured out the basics by following your reading patterns in the library.
What would prompt you to do that?
Ash took a step back, suddenly a deal more uncomfortable with the man in her bed.
Idle curiosity, mostly, and, I don't actually have all that much to do outside of classes. My failure to be paired killed my social life, and my own studies can only maintain my interest for so long. Other students' research occasionally provided a welcome distraction.
Not sure if I should be mortified or impressed.
I am allowing for an uncomfortable mixture of both.
That would be reasonable.
Oh, goddess, do you actually think you're creepy? I thought that was some joke on Ash's part.
I know what time every student wakes up normally. I would argue that is definitively creepy.
Ash flinched a little at the admittance.
Light and shadows, you're weird.
Weirdest in the school. Also, the best. I think that once me and Prude get the hang of this pairing thing, I could outmatch the heads. Oh, there's an idea. Prude, have you ever considered becoming heads?
I have a kingdom to worry about first.
Ah, very well. I would prefer to avoid staying here anyway. 16 years was enough for me.
I'm sure you'll find plenty of ways to show off in the King's Court.
Oh yes, I suppose I should talk to Zachariah and Luciana about that.
They let you call them by their first name?
No, I call them by their first name and they must accept it.
Hector's face took on a dark expression.
They may not acknowledge me as their better, but they will at least provide me the courtesy of eschewing honorifics.
Ah.
You're being kind of intense there, Heck.
Hector's face immediately lightened. He looked almost embarrassed.
My apologies.
Do you consider us your lessers then?
Hector seemed struck by the question. Ash wasn't entirely sure what had prompted it. Resentment?
No. I am clearly better than you in some areas, but you have an area of expertise entirely removed from my own. The same goes for Prudence, of course.
But you just said you consider yourself better than Zachariah. I can understand possibly considering yourself better than Luciana. She's a necromancer too. Zachariah is a paladin. You have none of her abilities.
I need not possess the abilities of a paladin to recognize she lacks skill. Her abilities are not deprived of finesse, talent, or even power. She merely abuses the ability of a paladin to instill strength in excess, and then uses her years of experience as a fighter. She is deadly in combat, but she is no great mage. Luciana's craft with golems is exemplary. Truly she is gifted, but I am better.
You're rather arrogant.
Also creepy. But I am still the best.
Ugh, let's not fight, please. I would really like my best friend and my partner to be friends.
I apologize, Prudence. I will try my best. I have found no fault in anything Veronica has said. Of course, my best with social interactions is a tad worse than my magical abilities.
Aw, you're adorable, like a deranged kitten.
Thank you.
I am not entirely sure that was a compliment.
First, we should conduct a little research. I would like to establish a range on a pairing ritual. Would you two mind helping me kidnap a few students?
Oh, do you really have to call it a kidnapping?
don't understand why I am required to accompany you on this.
Mostly because you were rather clear in your desire to experiment on other students.
I am not a student anymore, I'm a graduate. The other in that sentence is incorrect.
That is what concerns you?
Do not trouble yourself, Zachariah. As long as Mr. Warlock is with us, there is no risk of him misbehaving.
I'm not misbehaving. This would hardly be the first time I've conducted such experiments.
Yes, we know. Those experiments were never sanctioned either.
Not to mention that Mr. Warlock would require quite the number of mages to replicate a pairing ritual. Even if you had some of the most powerful mages to have ever attended, you would not have the power to simulate the yearly pairing ritual. There is a reason that we only perform it on an annual basis. We lack unpaired students who might have wished to participate, and we can't simply offer you students ill-prepared to graduate.
Nonsense! I cannot believe the spell is so limited. The requirement is the input of raw power, not number. A pair of mages trained in the task could likely...
Zachariah reared her horse and turned it so she might meet Hector Uglair. Instead, she seemed startled for a moment, finding Hector already locked on her with the eyes of a hound with blooded prey. Zachariah turned away sharply.
I don't care what you think, Mr. Warlock. You do not have permission to conduct your experiments, so for now you will stay by our side.
Ash was surprised to find that she seemed the only one to have registered the looks between the two. Even Crude seemed to have her attention elsewhere.
I must agree with my wife on this.
Zachariah smiled fondly at Luciana. The expression seemed alien on her face. Her own eyes fell on Hector, and she found herself suddenly facing down those same eyes. Blood became needles of ice in her veins. The frost in his glare melted into a warm grin. It had only been a heartbeat, but she still felt it. What had that been? That animosity. There was something wrong with that man.
So, what are we hoping to find?
I believe these two are of a mind that there's a paladin who has been training in secret in a nearby village.
That is more or less accurate.
I have another question for you, Heck.
What is it?
Why aren't you riding a horse?
Oh, Heck hates horses.
As long as he can keep up, Hector is welcome to do whatever he pleases.
You want to be a soldier, boy? You best learn to ride. An army cannot be expected to wait on your fancies.
Hector did not bother to fire a glare at her this time. Instead, he took a deep breath, lowered his gaze, and broke into a hard run. He outpaced the group in moments. Ash felt her jaw drop, but was quick to clench it shut. He was fast.
What is his deal with horses?
Oh, I don't know. He just mentioned it to me while the handlers were preparing Arcturus.
That boy has been afraid of horses since the day he arrived.
Horses like him about as much. There's something to be said of a man who cannot earn the trust of a horse.
Ash did not disagree. So here's where we'll stop. If you like the story, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And we will be back with part 3 of Brilliant Shadows tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.